Welcome to the show. Geek Insider presents Into the Geekverse, the place to get an inside look at movies, comics, games, tech, and everything exciting going on in the Geekverse. Join Matthew Harris and David King as they take a deeper look at the good, the bad, and the downright terrible things our Geekverse has to offer. With live chat, geek news, special guests, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and join us for a peek into the Geekverse.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to a special edition of Into the Geekverse. I am Matthew Harris, and of course, he is
David King.
And the whole reason that, you may have joined us last night. We were doing a show about, what the hell did we do a show about last night, Dave?
Black Adam, the new re-release.
Yeah, and then tonight we're doing one about Star Wars Tales of the Jedi, and then tomorrow night for the regularly scheduled show, we've got a horror movie special planned. But that's why we're here tonight, is to discuss Star Wars Tales of the Jedi. And what it is, folks, is it just premiered on Disney Plus. It's 6 15-minute long episodes. And I actually didn't know this thing was coming along until Wednesday came, and it was like, boom, this is here. But David, let's kind of cut right into it. With folks, and there may be a few spoilers here, but we're not going to deep dive these episodes. We're just going to take a glance at the 6 episodes. This won't be a full hour-long show. But David, what was your first impressions of episode 1? What stood out to you?
First thing right off the bat, the phrase that is used, face death, do not fear it, when the mother tells Ahsoka as a baby, is a saying that Ahsoka uses in the Clone Wars.
Oh, okay. And I haven't seen the Clone Wars, and that's some of the stuff that kind of confused me going throughout this, because that was a big thing here, folks. If you haven't seen it, this is 6 episodes, 15 minutes. But it covers a lot of time. It basically covers from a little bit before Phantom Menace up through the end of the Clone War, or Attack of the Clones. God damn it! Sorry.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, so of course we're going through the episode 1, and we, as Matthew said, is covering a lot of time. So we go over episode 1. I mentioned a little phrase that is mentioned in the Clone Wars. And when Matthew gets back, I'll be asking him his opinion of episode 1. I did think it was slow, but overall it's really good. But Matthew, what was the one thing that you'd like to tell our audience, or something that you captured about episode 1?
Well, it's funny that you said the 2 words that I wrote down as well. It's slow. It starts out slow. So, and folks, I assure you that the series does get better going forward. But that first episode, it's slow. And the big thing that stood out to me, of course, is that we do get to see Ahsoka show her first, or how they discover that she's Jedi, or has the Force. She's Force strong. And so that was really cool. The one thing I didn't like was the blockiness of the straight-on view of that saber-tooth crotch cricket, or whatever it was, that saber-tooth thing. That blockiness of the animation, man, that just really stood out to me, and that was something that I didn't like.
And I agree with that. I do have a question for you on the first episode. Even though it was slow, if you sit back and you appreciate it as an episode of whole, just about Force, not about the lightsaber, not about the training of becoming a Jedi, how would you, from 1 to 10, how good do you think the episode goes over the Force?
It's way down there. It shows, all it really shows of the Force is just a child using it. And I don't want to give anything away on this, but we see it. We see it in a cool way, but it's very minimal there, and it's it's not a big part of of the storyline.
Absolutely.
What I do understand, and as we'll get into as we go through the 6 episodes, this overall is a prequel to Ahsoka. This is what this is. This is setting up the live action Ahsoka series that's coming out. But there's a lot more interwoven into it. Don't think that this is all about Ahsoka just because that's what this episode is, because for the next 4 episodes, she ain't in it. So don't think that. Was there anything that jumped out at you that you didn't like on it?
I'm just going to sit back and appreciate it as it was a start to the series. I think it was slow, and I do agree with you. If I thought their goal was to try to give you an orientation of the Force, and I don't feel like it even really captured that if that was their goal. We kind of see it like you mentioned, but it wasn't a big, like, it didn't draw you into feeling the Force or like getting that feeling through it. But, it is what it is. And I think we've recapped episode 1 really well, especially since it's only 15 minutes. But for episode 2, I'll let you start us off. What did you want to tell us about episode 2?
That fucking Dooku totally sounded like Snape at first.
Yeah, no, I can see that now that I think about it.
Yeah, even Brenda said the same thing. She was like, "Is that Snape?" And I was like, "No, man, he's dead." But then I kept listening, and I was like, I had to go look. But no, yeah, Dooku sounds like Snape. But it opens up, and of course, you realize that some time has passed because it's none other than Qui-Gon as the Padawan to Dooku. And that was cool. That was the opening scene, and you're on it. I mean, at first, I have to admit, I'm like, why is Obi-Wan with Dooku? I immediately recognized Dooku, but the voice wasn't right for Qui-Gon at this stage. Something else we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, that was the first thing. There's something else, of course, towards the end I'll comment on. But what was your first thoughts?
My first thoughts was, I think that as big of a role that Count Dooku played in the Star Wars that we've known, I like to see back when he was Master Dooku. And I liked that not only that, but they brought us back to a moment in time that we know where he was training his Padawan Qui-Gon.
Right.
So
it kind of goes through that. It kind of goes through that whole timeline of their relation, not the whole timeline,
but you get the understanding,
right?
It comes back in. But
that was one of the. Well, that was real quick. That was just one of the questions I had. So Dooku's not so much in the Clone Wars. Well, I guess he.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not significantly, but you do see him a good amount of time.
Gotcha. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. Episode 2.
Yeah, because he even has to work with Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars. They have to work together on a mission. But so what I disliked and liked at the same time, piggybacking off of the whole liking that, was also we didn't even get to see what made him interested, like what made the Jedi Council feel like he could be a master. We immediately only see these negative impressions where he's already becoming, which is also cool. But also, I just wish that I at least somewhat got an understanding what made him special for becoming a master.
Right.
As this is something
and
that's
getting Qui-Gon, getting Qui-Gon as his Padawan. He had to be a really good Jedi. But you're right.
Not hate him, I dislike the
No, that's a good point. Because this is the episode towards the end that we do see him step into the dark side. Negotiations aren't going the way that he's wanting. Qui-Gon's trying to get him to stick to the way of the council and what the Jedi Council wants. And Dooku gets pissed and he uses the Force to try to get what he wants. And then that's all thwarted. But yeah, so we get to see his descent, or the beginning of his descent into the dark side. And that is one of the things that there wasn't anything I didn't like really in this episode. I like seeing Qui-Gon and Dooku together. I like Dooku's little step into the dark side. And so, and I'm sorry, episode 1 is called Life and Death. This is the one we're talking about here is Justice. Up next, was there anything else you wanted to say on 2?
Oh, no.
Episode 3 is called Choices. And once again, Dooku's there, but drum roll, we get Mace Windu. What was your first impressions going in here?
I extremely liked that we're getting the Master Windu and you get Master Dooku. I was thinking once again to the other one was like, okay, are we gonna get where Windu is complimenting Dooku and stuff? Like, are we gonna see what made him such a great Jedi to make him a master and everything? Which we do, but we don't get. You have to really look for it to kind of get where you see he's good and sought after. But mainly, they're just furthering Dooku's story, watching him become more corrupted by the dark side. From his opinion, his opinions are becoming too strong, and we see that happen. But I mean, once again, I like it because you start watching this, and now it's like I'm already gone into the story because this past one and this one kind of tie in, and now I'm like, okay, let's continue the story, and you don't have to wait weeks. You're just like, watch
exactly. That's a big thing, Disney. If you're listening, that was really cool that we were able to binge watch this. If y'all would have made me wait 6 weeks to watch 15-minute episodes, I don't know that I ever would have caught this until a year from now or something. So smart move releasing it all at once. Again, I thought it was cool that Mace and Dooku are together. Like you were saying, they're both masters at the time. Mace is automatically, he's the one that is with the Jedi Council. He's wanting to do what precedent says or what they're told to do.
With that being said, that is something that I wrote down. He is just as much as in the live action movies, very by the rules.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
If you think about it, from what I've read now, of course, I've read the official, and I'll make this very short. The official statement was Samuel L. Jackson was like, I want a purple lightsaber. And George Lucas was like, okay, you can get a purple lightsaber. But what I've read was the purple lightsaber officially started meaning somebody who balanced the dark side and the light side.
Exactly, right. Exactly.
Which is weird because we're getting a very strong push of like, only good side, black and white, don't do this.
This is what I wrote down on this part. Because of that, I'm wondering if Disney has something in their head for this, that they were going to get some kind of Mace series, and we're going to see that he went from the black, white, follow the rules, you stay with the rules, and then something happens to him, and that's when he starts, utilizing. Well, that wouldn't make sense either, because at this time he's got his purple lightsaber. So
we've seen a couple of rumors. I don't know whether it's true because it's the internet. You can't always trust it. That Samuel L. Jackson could be making an appearance back as Mace Windu, and I'm wondering if this could potentially start his skepticism and realizing that the way that the Jedi Council has always done things is no longer working, and he's having to be the one who balances it. I could see that, but I do want to mention, Robert, thank you for joining us. Of course, we did see a bunch of the known Jedi Council.
Very good point, though. I do believe that in this episode we did see Yoda, because Yaddle's not shown in it at Master Catri's funeral. They're showing the casket, and we haven't met Yaddle yet, and so when the camera pans in, there's several of the Jedi Council there, and it looked like Yoda to me.
Because no hair. I think I remember like you do. Which, speaking of what you touched point with, the Jedi burial, I like being able to see that ceremony. It just did it for a second, and it was perfectly enough time for us to see this official, because, dude, think about how many Jedi has died, has fallen. There's been something through all of Star Wars. And this was really good to be able to see a burial. These are these really special people, and being able to watch that burial was awesome, even if it was just for that moment. And it was just enough time.
And folks, this is not a spoiler. The episode opens. We know that that Mace and Dooku are going to this planet to retrieve Master Katri's body. I think that's how you pronounce it. And but we don't know what happened. And Dooku is wanting to investigate it more. And Mace is kind of like, look, we're supposed to do what the council says. Let's report back to the council. Yeah, something's amiss here, but let's report it back. Anyway, it all culminates in a really cool fight scene. and that was my favorite part. That was a cool fight scene for as far as what we had so far. But let's hold that thought. Folks, I totally blew it again. I did it the other night. I didn't tell you all. This show is officially sponsored by Colgate. And like I said, I was supposed to mention that at the beginning of the show, but we do have to pay a few bills. So here we go. Hey, everyone. It's a known fact that when brushing, most people miss up to 40% of their teeth. But thankfully, the Hum by Colgate has you covered. Hum by Colgate is a smart toothbrush and app combination that will give you and the kids sparkling smiles and more of them. Colgate is the official sponsor of Into the Geekverse, and you can get into the rhythm of better brushing by heading over to shop.colgate.com. As an official insider, you can use discount code GEEK20 and get 20% off the Hum by Colgate. That's shop.colgate.com and discount code GEEK20. All right, folks, welcome back. In case you're just joining us live on the YouTube channel, we are going over Star Wars Tales of the Jedi. We have gone through the first 3 episodes already. This is a 6 episode, 15 minutes each. So, and we're not giving a lot away. There might be a couple of spoilers, but we are leaving that for you to watch because it's brand new. It just came out Wednesday. And so episode 4, and this one is called dun, 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 The Sith Lord. And so once again, this is one thing that kind of messed me up at first, brother. I'll admit, is this freaking timeline, how things were progressing along. It took me a little bit to figure out that, okay, we're jumping several years at a time on here. And this is the one that I have the most to talk about. These next 3, there's some good stuff that we can reveal without revealing a lot because I have questions. But go ahead on this one, the Sith Lord. It starts out with we're at the Jedi Temple. What was your first thoughts going in?
I mean, I have some notes to kind of sporadic and stuff, but the first thing, just because it's a question / a dislike. Why don't they have the same Jedi ships? Each Jedi have different ships. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah, and yeah, I don't
know. I really like the Jedi ships that we got to see Obi-Wan and Anakin use, and you even have the Stargate where they get in it and they go into hyperspace, and I feel like that was very iconic. But I didn't know if you knew a little bit more about if there never was supposed to be an Obi-Wan and Anakin just decided to get the same ones, but they all had different ones, and I was like, because even another Master Jedi had the same one. I think it was. I don't know his name, but it was the tentacle ones and stuff. I think he had the same one too. And so I was just.
I didn't pay attention enough to the ships. I know there was a couple of them. I was like, oh, that was cool when they come in for a landing or whatever. But the first thing that jumps out to me, of course, is the opening scene. We got Dooku again. Dooku is prominent throughout this series up until the last 2. He disappears after that. Yeah. But he's at the Jedi Temple, and they immediately let you know where you're at in the timeline, sort of, because he goes into the archives at the Jedi Temple, and this was huge for me. This is what really started out this episode. He deletes the archive history of Kamino. It takes out the existence of it, and he uses Master Sifo-Dyas's credentials. Now, folks, I know those names might ring a bell, and you're just not clear on what it is. This is the beginning of the Clone Army. Master Sifo-Dyas is the one that placed the order on Kamino for the Clone Army, which has Order 66 implanted in it. And so that's where we're at in the timeline. So
Camino is the place that all
the clones come from.
from.
Yeah. And so I go ahead, because that's where I'm at as far as this part of the timeline, because there's a lot that happens in this episode.
The next main points that I was wanting to talk about was later when Dooku arrives, and I'm sure you know where I'm talking about, so I'll let you continue before I jump to the end of that episode.
Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. Because I got, there's several points in this episode, because it jumps ahead again, because then we all of a sudden we're Qui-Gon's encounter with Darth Maul on Tatooine is mentioned. Mm-hmm. And then but there's a big point I wanted to talk about is Yoda senile when we meet him. Yaddle talks normally. Why the hell does Yoda talking backwards riddles? Yaddle talks just clear as day. I
can't believe that I didn't think about that. Yeah, we need some official explanation here.
Right. I think we're owed one.
Yeah.
Because Yaddle just comes out, you're like, woohoo! The first one. There's someone else. There's been Yoda who talks in riddles, and then there's Grogu who doesn't talk at all. We got another one. And then she just flat out busted out like, hey, how you doing, man? You want to go over here and have a cup of coffee? Yeah. She's just full out busting it out.
But the only thing I got right now is I think that it is an older movie, and they wrote it in a way to make him seem more wise, and nobody's yet just pieced together all this and told us, wow, we should really give our fans an explanation of what's going on now.
Right. They need to here. They should have just, in my opinion, it should have been a species thing, because that just makes Yoda look oddball, because she's on the Jedi. Yaddle is, on the Jedi Council, and she's a badass Jedi. And so her just coming out and there's no way her and Yoda ever hooked up, because she would have been going, this fool sounds like a drunk idiot, barfly, 3 a.m. All the time, unless Yoda was, hitting the whiskey. But yeah, see, then there's still much more. This was another big point. Bro, Qui-Gon and Sidious at this point in this episode, it's the actual voices of the actors from the movies. Could Samuel L. Jackson just shoot the finger and didn't want to do Mace anymore?
Well, see, that was where I was confused, because, like I said, I had heard rumors, but it could also be like budget. I mean, if it's just a voice, I mean,
Liam Neeson comes in, and Sam Jackson ain't gonna come in at the same amount of money. I mean, unless Liam's out there going, yeah, $5, okay, yeah. I mean,
it's true. I don't know. There's not a clear explanation, because Samuel L. Jackson was still a fan of the part. It's not like he was like against this and he doesn't like it unless it's a lot of money. Like, it doesn't really make sense. The only thing I can think of is they just didn't care enough to push it or something. There's no explanation, whether it was money, whether they're like, whatever, we'll just get another voice actor, we'll just get it going. Whether he was too busy, I don't know what it was, but
right,
unfortunately,
and that could be it. I mean, but he couldn't do a voiceover. He can do that from home now. Yeah, it is, because when he turns around, you're like, they made the animation look like him, but just the voice was off. And like I'm saying, that you've got Qui-Gon, man. You got freaking Qui-Gon, and you got Darth Sidious. But I think his is kind of a thing of, no, I'm Darth Sidious. As long as I'm alive, that's my voice. Yeah. But the only other thing I wanted to say before we comment on the kind of the ending, like I said, it's not revealing a lot here. It's just to give you an idea of the time framing on this, because a little bit later in the episode, they refer to Qui-Gon's death. And so this is full on coinciding behind the scenes with episode 1, Phantom Menace. And so then go ahead. What was anything you wanted to throw out before? I just got a statement I want to say before we go to the next one.
Well, one question was, and I guess I didn't keep track of the timeline too well, so I guess it's time for you to buckle up. So one point I know they mentioned, Dooku mentions about Qui-Gon and why did Dooku let Qui-Gon get killed by Darth Maul, which it's not a spoiler, we know, Phantom Menace. But
Right.
then we also see the conversation with Dooku and Qui-Gon talking about the Padawan Obi-Wan and how good Obi-Wan's doing.
Right.
But I don't remember at what place this took part. But I did want to just quickly mention it was nice seeing Qui-Gon as a master and about he had a Padawan named Obi-Wan and Obi-Wan was doing so well.
Yeah.
But to what you were saying, into that, because you were going to let me go ahead, did you notice that where the scene where Dooku comes in, and trying not to spoil a lot, where Yaddle comes into the picture, did you notice that that's the same area that Yoda and Dooku fight?
See, I was wondering that because there was a couple of parallels there. And again, trying not to give too much away, folks, Yaddle is a very, very, very strong Jedi. I want to say something, and I'll have to say it off the air because I don't want to spoil the whole thing here. Because she does something and then something happens and you're like, wait, what the fuck was that all about? But no, yeah, I was wondering if that was the same area because I did kind of was catching that. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, that was the first thing, and then I thought, I was trying to think of a way of wording it and not giving stuff away, but we had just already kind of talked about it. So, wasn't Dooku already known to be Count Dooku before?
That's what I've been wondering. I was hoping that you would bring this up.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. That Sidious is already known that Dooku's already known to have been turned at this point. And
but then he was there, and Yaddle follows him and everything, and I'm like,
and he's like, "Well, you can't live because you'll blow my cover." I mean, he doesn't say that, but that's the way it comes across.
Yeah, and the reason why, and everybody else to understand what we're talking about, when we just mentioned that he talks to, when he's talking about Qui-Gon dying by the hand of Darth Maul, then that takes us back to Phantom Menace, which at that point we already know about Count Dooku, and so wouldn't he already be? That's what we're referring to, because in this episode it seems to allude that he is still a Jedi and undercover, and that's why what Matthew was saying. So I was really weary about pulling this out because you're trying not to spoil too much, but like it was eating at me alive.
No, see, and I was so glad that I watched this a second time, brother, because the first time around, when I messaged you and said, we have to do an emergency show on this show, I was confused as hell on this whole timeline. I'm like, wait a minute. There wasn't clones yet. So because Rex all of a sudden ends up in it here in a minute. It was
about that.
Yeah, I'm sure. But okay, so that's it. That's all we're going to talk about on episode 4. But this is the end of Dooku's story in this series. But
go ahead. One last thing on that. So, how come at the very, 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 very end? Let me phrase it as a question. Did you feel after ending that episode did you feel like Dooku was certain that he was a Sith?
Yeah.
Right? I disagree. Because they animation wise made him feel like he struggled way too much. Like he still didn't feel like what he was doing was right. That's what I saw, even though he did it. I'm just saying his actions that he actually did, but his body language and his voice or whatever, it seemed like the camera angles and everything wanted us to think that he's regretting it. But like he's supposed to be die hard at this point.
Right. I mean, he just did something that there's no coming back from.
But anyways, that was the last thing I wanted to say.
And then so we jump from there in the timeline, and all of a sudden that we see that Anakin is torturing the hell out of Ahsoka. That's pretty much this episode. Anakin just tortures her. No, he's training her, but
she starts by doing a standard Jedi test with things
Right.
that mimic droids and everything, and she's passing it with flying colors. And she's like, "How do I do, Master?"
And he's like, "That's nothing." And it's cool. I do understand Anakin's thinking at this point, but I am not familiar with the Clone Wars. I do not understand their relationship. My exposure has been to Ahsoka has been the trailers that I've seen of Clone Wars and a couple of the episodes that I've caught parts of, and then and Mandalorian.
Did you see Rebels? She was in Rebels too.
No, I did watch a couple of episodes early on, but anyway.
So I gotta say, did officially just yes or no? Did you like this altogether, and especially these ones that we're talking about,
brother? I'm kind of lost, and this is something I want to throw out because again, I hadn't seen Clone Wars. What we see in the movies, Anakin is never a master. How the hell does he get a Padawan?
It's addressed in Clone Wars, and I really don't want to spoil it because where I was leading was if you even like this and you didn't love it, you need to stop what you're doing and you need to watch this because this right here, this enjoyment is a taste of the entire enjoyment of Clone Wars.
Well, see,
I love Clone Wars as much as I have loved this.
Well, and that was my thing too. After rewatching it tonight, I have made the decision. That's something I'm going to do. I don't think Brenda really has any interest in it, so it's something that I can throw on a couple of episodes a night, or after work, watch it before I go in for dinner or whatever.
Well,
but
to answer your question, she gets thrown at Anakin and Obi-Wan in the middle of a situation. It was supposed to be Obi-Wan's, and then I think Obi-Wan, because he wants Anakin to be a master, and I think Obi-Wan sweet talks, and the Jedi's in the middle of something that they're not getting as much. And I think it just kind of gets pushed on him, and he's kind of reluctant, and then he's like, "Oh well, if I'm going to do this, you can be the best."
But
and it's
why isn't ever Ahsoka? How do they explain that she just conveniently out of every freaking encounter and everything of the prequels? If he had this Padawan, and just all of a sudden, nah, you sucked. You don't get to be in the movie portion of this. But now, she was a badass though, because she is. If you go back, if you compare this timeline to the timeline of the prequels, she's interwoven. Wait. For not hey, I've already given that up several episodes ago. I already said I've had a ding on my geek card for not having seen Clone Wars, but yeah, that's something that's really screwed with me because
I think if you watch the Clone Wars, and I wish I could watch them again. I watched it over twice, but it's been a long time since I rewatched it. I think that you probably could find an explanation in there, as they are usually pretty careful about major things like this. But my best explanation is just think about this episode and think you really going to think Anakin's going to let them go on all these high missions that he was doing and blah, blah, blah. Plus the timing, if you look. So that may answer it, but I wish I could give you a more definite answer. But also I don't want to spoil too much for the Clone Wars. So.
And before I move to my statement for the end of this episode, hey, sorry guys, I'm yelling at my dogs. They're homeschooled, and you know how that goes. But was there anything else you wanted to say on the meat of what is of this episode? Because this one was not one of my favorite.
I was just going to say, and we've kind of went over it, I love Anakin and Ahsoka, and this wraps up their relationship throughout the Clone Wars. And we get a bit of it. The last two episodes I've blended together, so I can't remember quite what part is in which episode, and I'll let you do the asking because you already kind of mentioned it, and then I'll piggyback off of that because I'll probably have to explain it to you.
Well, I'm just wondering, so this episode, does it encapsulate the beginning to the end of Clone Wars? Because at the ending, I was kind of confused. The only thing I can figure is that Rex is getting her away after Order 66.
Okay, so we are at that part. I wasn't sure if it was at the beginning of the next one because it kind of blended together for me.
Yeah.
Ahsoka only survives because Rex turns on every single other clone. He defects from the Order 66 to save Ahsoka because of their special relationship from the Clone Wars.
Okay. That's what I was wondering, because I don't know any of that. And my first thing was, I said, no freaking clue what that ending was. And then I thought about it as we were into 6, and I was like, wait, was Rex getting her away after Order 66? And so then we are into episode 6. And I'm sorry, folks, the last episode was Practice Makes Perfect, episode 5. This one is episode 6, the final episode of Star Wars Tales of the Jedi.
Now, I got to mention, before episode 6, I got to mention, just because you didn't really watch Clone Wars, but if you remember, now that you kind of understand, and I've told you that kind of stuff, at the beginning of the episode, and it's not, it is, but it's not spoiling, but I've got to, so for this episode, when Anakin is telling her, you've got to be prepared for more than this stupid test that they're giving you for.
Right.
And you know what I'm talking about that they do. How awesome that you got to see she gets prepared for more than just generic plots. And that becomes very relevant into the major story and how she's one of the last remaining surviving Jedis. So anyways, I wanted to mention that, like, how cool was it now sitting back and realizing that he trained her, because, like, I mean, he wasn't that far along, but, like, dude, he's got such powerful connection to the Force, and knowing that we're not just, you know, used by the Senates and the Council, and we're way more, and we're a force to be reckoned with, and something's going to happen at some point. We got to be prepared.
That you're going to be needed it. And I don't want to give anything away on this. It can feel at one point in time, you're like, Jesus Christ, is this the beginning of Anakin's dark side? But it's not. It's explained as
this ray of light goes on him. And you're like, oh.
Exactly. All right. So that is the end of episode 5. We're moving into the final episode. And I am going to say here, folks, if you haven't seen Tales of the Jedi, you might want to turn it off here, because I know I have a few spoilers. And I don't want to ruin this for anybody, but the rest of the episodes you're safe on. There's a lot that's going on in there, but this thing, I can't talk to David about this without ruining it for somebody, because as y'all know, this is our weekly discussion on whatever geeky shit we got into for the week.
Second of 3 for this week.
Right. And we got another one tomorrow. And so this starts out where, again, we've shifted in time. We're at Padme's funeral. And before I reveal what Bail Organa sees, is there anything that you want to say, or do you want to pick it up from there?
No, I'll let you go ahead. You seem like you've really got this down packed and you're excited. I really like it, and it explains more of what I've gotten pieces after the Clone Wars that you don't get in this. So this episode explains more after the Clone Wars that you don't get in the series.
Okay, because see, that was a big question that I had. Belle sees Ahsoka at Padme's funeral. So this is the end of the prequels right here, the opening scene of this episode. And as we've seen, some of these episodes will span a few good years, but it's all happening in the time of the prequels, for maybe a little bit before. I don't know how Ahsoka's race ages, but it's pretty much within the prequels. But so we're at Padme's funeral. Bell looks up. He's crying, of course. There goes Padme, and he sees Ahsoka, or he catches a glimpse of Ahsoka. But my question was, and I kind of cut on this a minute ago, or I did really cut in on it. But so in the Clone Wars, I take it Ahsoka and Padme were friends.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, she says it in this. That's why I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's. I was just trying to make sure that I'm not spoiling anything. Yeah, they're friends, but it's just like anything else. It's exactly what you would think. Anakin has a Padawan, and of course he's
Okay,
with
so
Padme,
she would.
and she's with him, and she's like, "I'll keep your secret." And
question, you know that, and you're in Ahsoka's position. You know that your master has changed to the dark side at this point. You're his woman, or who you're acquainted with, is dead. She's had 2 miscarriages. You're wanted. All of your entire order is destroyed. Is that relationship worth it just to go see Padme? Just to see her, because you can't go up and talk to anybody? Was their relationship that strong is where I'm getting at, because that just kind of seemed off to me.
Yes and no. It's not that the relationship is what was so important, but I really don't want to spoil.
Okay, and I'm gonna go watch Clone Wars
for the best, because it takes forever for you to get through this, but you kind of already get the. It's not spoiling it, but all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, go see it. If you don't want really big spoilers, cover your ears.
I haven't seen it. Okay, so how can I? It's going to be a really good show with you talking to yourself. I don't want really big spoilers.
No, it depends on the level. But to answer your question, it's not necessarily the relationship. It's the nature of who Ahsoka is.
Okay.
So that's without giving away a lot, but I hope that helps answer, or at least give you alleviation right now, rather than waiting days to finish this series.
Yeah, and so going into the next segment here, Ahsoka, she talks to Bell, she takes off. She disappears, and we don't know how much time has passed from this point when she's at Padme's funeral to when we see her next. It's back on Ahsoka.
Well,
go ahead. No.
Well, I was going to say an important point. Do you remember about the balcony? How funny did you think it was?
Oh,
when Bell was confusing this. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that. I thought they were like, whatever.
He said, and what he's talking about, folks, is Bell is telegraphing messages to Ahsoka in front of a couple of stormtroopers and confusing the hell out of them because they don't know that Ahsoka's nearby, and that's who he's really talking to. But then the next thing we see is Ahsoka is on another planet. We don't know where. She's among the working people, but they are still within the Empire's control. They are under their jurisdiction. And Ahsoka is hiding who she is, of course. Something happens, and somebody realizes that she is not all she's cracked up to be, and
she's more than what she's.
Yeah, she's a transformer. She's a transformer. Write this down. I got to tell you about the transformer thing before we get off the phone. Before we get off the phone, before we get off the show. But my big thing was, before we get to what happened, because I don't want to reveal anything, when they're coming back from going to town, they're going they go to market to sell the goods. They're coming back, and there's devastation. Before I touch on the one point I do want to discuss in that, was there anything you wanted to bring up?
At that point, I love that we get to see Ahsoka's skepticism is verified. So you get a little bit more understanding of how powerful she is at this point, because we got the last episode, her training. We already kind of know, like, she's kind of strong with the Force. Like, you're getting validation through this, understanding why she's an important character that we're choosing to make such a big deal out of in these movies and
Right.
shows and stuff.
That's something I wanted to mention after we're done. To the point of leading into Ahsoka the series.
Just so everybody knows, in case you don't know Ahsoka, why we're talking about this so much is you're getting an understanding for why she's so important, and people are choosing to put her in all of these shows and emphasizing her out now.
And of course, I think there's a lot more that's to come. If not, we wouldn't be having the series that's coming. But so without giving anything away, my question was that an Inquisitor or a Sith?
I gotta say Inquisitor because of the lightsaber. Because
that's what I thought too.
Right, and because of the timeline, it is
still with it. At first, I was like, "Wait a minute," and then I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, okay."
Yeah, so I gotta go with that. And plus, he wasn't, even though that there is cocky Sith, trying not to spoil too much, he did not give off, and it was not. Because also, Sith do not really dirty their hands, and they would have to have a personal connection with Ahsoka to really get down there. So why would they send us? I feel like all evidence points towards Inquisitor.
And at this point, they are, because we know from Obi-Wan, the Inquisitors are actively hunting down any Jedis that escaped Order 66. It was just, at first I was like, oh shit, a Sith. And my first thing was, who the fuck is this Sith? Is what I typed in my notes. But then I saw the lightsaber and I was like, no, this is an Inquisitor.
Oh, it's upside down. That's literally exactly what I wrote. And then I was like, it's not. It's a symbol.
Right. And, like I said earlier in this is definitely leading into the Ahsoka series. I think for me, it definitely makes me want to know more. I'm excited about the Ahsoka series. It let me know more, and they at least spurred one person to go and watch the Clone Wars so that I'm up on the timeline before Ahsoka starts. I do like what they did with her. There wasn't a full on, this is a prequel. Wait, I'm sorry, I had something. Yeah, that's a good point, Robert. The question is the basis. There's always two Sith, no more, no less. That's a really good point. So we don't know at this. We know Maul's gone. There is a gap between Maul and Vader.
But doesn't Grievous call himself Sith?
Yeah,
because he says he was trained in the ways by Dooku. He was trained in the ways of the Jedi, and I thought in that whole scene he's like, and he's a Sith. I thought I could be wrong. For some reason, Grievous has just not really been that big of a thing.
And with the bringing up Grievous, that's kind of who I thought that was at first when that Inquisitor come up and with that triangle face. I was like, whoa, we're getting Grievous here. And admittedly, by this time, and it was 10 o'clock, I'd had 1 or 17 bourbons, and so but at first, I did think it was Grievous. It's
now, I've got to ask something when you finish yourself. I didn't.
No. Go ahead, because I already said what I said. I was just going to repeat myself.
So you remember when they're like, we have nowhere to go, blah, 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 trying not to spoil too much.
Right.
See Bell Organa, because the reason why I mentioned it before, Bell Organa gives Ahsoka a means to contact him in case anything happens. And so she does, and he says, what he says, I'm sure you remember, trying not to give too spoilers.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, you didn't see Rebels either. I'm wondering if that leads into Rebels or if it leads into what we're about to get into.
It has to be what we're about to get into, because it still has to be before A New Hope, because Ahsoka's not in A New Hope. And so this is what I'm thinking, is that we are about to have a lot of Vader and then with flashbacks of Anakin and Ahsoka, because we know that Hayden Christensen is signed on to be in these roles. And so that's what I'm thinking it leads into, is she's coming back, and we're going to get these storylines that happened before A New Hope, where she's either trying to save Anakin or she's helping start the resistance.
Well,
that's what I'm wondering.
The question is, and it's not a spoiler because it's of Rebels, and I haven't seen Rebels, but the only part that I have is because Ahsoka's in the ending. Ahsoka is battling Darth Vader in the end of Rebels.
Oh, okay.
And he says, I'm not going to leave you again to Darth Vader, to Anakin. And that's all I know of the entire thing of Rebels is at the end she does that, which means
okay, so
isn't this before Rebels if she's back into the fight? Or did she do that and then fail and decided to hide herself? Like, where does this fall in that?
And folks, if y'all are out there listening on the podcast, please feel free to jump over on YouTube and leave a comment or send us an email, Matthew@geekinsider.com, David@geekinsider.com, and tell us where we need to put another mark on our geek card, or an X on our geek card for not knowing this. David's giving me shit for not having seen Clone Wars, and yet he hasn't seen Rebels. So we're kind of, well, I guess I haven't seen Rebels either. So he's 2-1, but that kind of wraps it up for me. Like I said, I predict that we're going to have a lot of her and Vader and the Ahsoka series. I don't see Hayden Christensen just being, they're going, hey, it's him in the mask, we're giving him credit. I think it has to be the flashbacks, like what we saw in Obi-Wan. And so it's going to be interesting. It's definitely worth the watch, folks. If you've been tuned in the whole time, we have not spoiled everything, even though these are just 15-minute episodes, and there's a 90 minutes, or not even 90 minutes of episodes, and we took 60 minutes to discuss them. There's still a lot in there.
Absolutely. There's a lot to see. Like Matthew said, if y'all have been tuning in here, we'd like to thank you so much for spending the time with us tonight. But make sure that you're also tuning in tomorrow night at 9 o'clock when we go at our normal live time, where we'll be doing a special Halloween event for you guys, going over some horror movies. And you don't want to miss that, trust me, because me and Matthew are really big fans of Halloween, and we've been watching these horror movies. So you do not want to miss that.
But I went to the theater today. You went to the theater yesterday. We both watched some things. There's a lot to unpack on the horror choice that we have had this season. And so it should be interesting because, like you said, we both enjoy them. And my wife doesn't. You're getting your fiance. Oh, did it again. I got you engaged. Your girlfriend is getting into them, and so it'll be interesting to see, because once again we've seen these things, and you guys don't realize how hard this is. David and I usually talk immediately, and we have to bite our tongues now. And to
give y'all an understanding of how immediate we're talking about, I'm talking about leaving the theater door and dialing Matthew's phone number and be like, bro.
Exactly, because he knew I had seen it. He's like, okay, because we always have waited until the other one has seen it. We don't give each other spoilers, and so that's why there's 3 shows this week, because there was so much going on. I told him, I was like, David, there's no way in hell I can go till next week to discuss Black Adam. And then go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and guys, I really want to let you know that we appreciate your time. And if this is the content that y'all really like, and you like us doing these recently released movies, and you'd like to see more of this stuff coming in and of more volume and stuff, let us know, because we're happy to oblige.
Yeah, definitely. All right, David, anything else? I give my 2 thumbs up on this. Just beware, folks, that if you have not seen Clone Wars or Rebels, you're going to have to put your geek brain to work to follow the timeline, because it spans a lot of time for an hour and 30 minutes, for 90 minutes.
And absolutely, I give it 2 thumbs up and 2 big toes up. And I'd like to say, guys, we made it under an hour. And we've made our timetable here.
Liar, because we said 30 minutes. So
they don't have to know that.
But hey, maybe that's what we need to do on these special episodes. Go, oh yeah, let's keep it at 30. And we were doing so really, really good until those last couple of episodes. We were right on the mark. But folks, thank y'all for tuning in. I hope y'all enjoy your Saturday, the rest of your Saturday night. It's still early all over the country. Tomorrow night, like David said, we'll be back at 9 o'clock Central. We're going to discuss some horror movies, get you in the mood for Halloween. And so if you want to join us live, folks, it's every Sunday night, 9 p.m. Central on YouTube and Facebook. And more coming soon. We got a new TikTok channel. Go look at Geek Insider. David, any last words?
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yep. Y'all have a great week, everyone. Or, have a great day. You better be back tomorrow night.
Oh, that does it for this episode of Into the Geekverse. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. And if you want to join us live, hit that bell so you never miss a show. Want to catch us on the go? Listen to our podcast on every major platform, but you can catch the real fun on YouTube. Be sure to visit geekinsider.com for tons of great geek content and advertising opportunities. And if you want to stay up to date on all things geeky, sign up for our newsletter. We'll see you next Sunday at 9 p.m. Central. And if you're not here, we might have to revoke your geek card. Have a great week, everyone.